In the last video, you learned how to find mean absolute deviation, and you looked at how far pieces of data were from the mean using dot plots. There is another way that you can organize that data, and we're going to practice it here while we also use the MAD to compare two data sets and what that MAD would mean whenever you have two different MADs to compare. The first thing that we're going to look at is that you are going to be able to take a partner quiz, and you have to pick between Jose or Lupe to partner with. So we are first going to use two measures of central tendency, mean and median, to see if we can make a determination using those pieces of data. Take a moment and pause your video and find the mean and median of each of these 6 pieces of data for Joseph and for Lupe. Hopefully, after completing the mean and median for both Jose and Lupe, you got that the mean was 84. For both of them, their total quiz points added up to 504. And when you divide by 6, you would get 84. You have to remember that mean is kind of like a balance point. So if you think about taking all of your quiz points that you've earned in total and putting them in a bag and then sharing each of those points equally, that's all mean is. So they both have a mean of 84, and then they both also had the same median, and they had a median of 85. You have to remember that your data needed to be put in order. Since there was an even number of pieces of data, the median fell between those two circles. In this case, in the circles are the same pieces of data. That worked out well. Between 82 and 88, the range there is 6, so the 85 would sit right there in the middle. So take a moment and look at the next question. Based on the mean and median, who do you think you would pick to be your partner? Really, you can have different arguments, but if you are simply looking at the mean and the median as your data, at this point, it really wouldn't matter who you pick since they have the same data. So remember that these two things are measures of central tendency, so how things sit in terms of the center. But we're now going to look at their mean absolute deviations to see if that will help us make a better decision. I'm going to go through Joseph's MAD with you, and then you will do Lupe on your own. So this is similar to what you did before with the dot plot in the last example, but this time we're going to just organize it in a chart, which I find to be a little bit easier, but just kind of depends on your preference. So in the chart, you're going to put the piece of data that you have, and it doesn't matter if you want to put them in order from least to greatest, you can, or you can just put them straight from the chart. I'm going straight from the original chart, less chance for me to have copied over a mistake. So those are just original pieces of data. The difference is the data minus the mean. So 90 minus 84, 82 minus 84, and you're going to go and fill these pieces of data in. Find the difference. This is where knowing your integer rules comes in handy. One way to know that if you have checked it or if you've done it correctly to check it is to add up these values prior to finding the absolute value. And if you add 6 plus negative 2, that's 4, plus negative 14, that's negative 10, plus negative 10, that's negative 20. Negative 20 plus 4 is negative 16, and then negative 16 plus 16 is 0. If you can add those values up and get 0, you know you've done everything correctly so far. And the reason that that sums to 0 is because you're looking at how the data sits below and above the mean. So again, with mean being the balance point, you should have an equal amount of data above and below, or at least their difference should be the same above and below. So now when we find absolute value, that's obviously going to change because now we're not worried about whether the data falls above or below. We're just worried how far from the mean does it sit. So this is 6, 2, 14, 10, 4, and 16. So those are my positive values. So I'm going to add up those things. And my sum is 52. To find the mean absolute deviation, I just take the sum. I'm just finding the mean of the absolute values. So 52 divided by 6. And I get 8.6 repeating. I'm just going to round it to the nearest tenth, 8.7. So we have to interpret what that means, and what that 8.7 means is that on average, each piece of data is about 8.7 points, you could say units, but in this case we know it's points, away from the mean. Take a moment and pause your video, and you can either have printed off this worksheet or you can just copy down a quick table with the data, the difference, absolute value, and then find the mean absolute deviation for Lupe. Hopefully you had a chance to finish Lupe's MAD, and I got 4.3 repeating, which to the nearest tenth was 4.3. So that means on average, Lupe's points are about 4.3 points away from the mean. You have one more question to answer. So based on the mean absolute deviation, would your choice of peer change? Why or why not? The question that may pop up for you in the video is just going to say, who would you pick based on the MAD? I would probably choose Lupe. I am not a bargaining type. And again, there's really no correct or incorrect answer here if you can support your data. I would prefer to have somebody who is more consistent. MAD measures variability. The smaller the MAD, the less variable that data is. So Lupe's smaller MAD to me means that that person is more consistent. So I know if I choose Lupe, I'm probably going to have somebody that could, get in the 80 range. If somebody decided instead that they wanted to go with Joseph, they have a greater chance, or the mean and the median are the same, but you might be bargaining a little bit more because you could get 100. Joseph might know his stuff that day, but then maybe one day for this particular quiz, the 70, he didn't know his stuff. So you're less consistent with Joseph, knowing whether or not he would know the material.